The peace station floated above the ruined world of Velis Prime like a ghost. Blue cracks of energy covered the planet beneath it, glowing through storms and broken cities. From orbit, the entire world looked like it had been shattered and stitched back together. Commander Ethan Vale stood silently near the shuttle window. The scars across his hands were still fresh. Across from him, Lieutenant Mara Ortiz checked her rifle again. "You really think this peace deal is real?" she asked. Ethan watched the massive alien ships outside. "No," he answered calmly. "I think everyone got tired of burying their dead." Mara leaned back quietly. The war between humanity and the Varelian Dominion had lasted 11 brutal years. Entire colonies burned. Millions died. But humans never surrendered. Especially Ethan Vale. Among aliens, his name had become a nightmare. The Grave Hound. The human commander who survived impossible battles. The man who destroyed his own warship just to stop an alien fleet from reaching Earth space. Humans called him a hero. Aliens called him dangerous. The shuttle finally docked. No guards waited outside. No welcoming ceremony. Only silence. "That's comforting," Mara muttered. The doors opened slowly. Cold white light filled the cabin. 3 Varelian officials stood outside waiting. Tall. Perfect posture. Silver eyes without emotion. Their pale skin glowed faintly beneath the station lights. One stepped forward. "Commander Ethan Vale." "That's me. You have arrived for the peace accord." "Looks like it." The alien studied the scars on Ethan's face. "You are injured." Ethan shrugged slightly. "So are you." A long pause followed. Then the alien turned. "Follow." The station felt wrong immediately. The walls pulsed faintly like they were alive. No footsteps echoed. Every hallway curved too smoothly, almost organic. Mara moved closer to Ethan. "I officially hate this place." "I hated it before we landed," Ethan replied. They entered a massive circular chamber. And Ethan stopped. A woman stood alone in the center. At least, she looked human. Long white hair fell across glowing silver skin. Blue patterns moved faintly beneath her arms and neck like living light. She wore no armor. No chains. No expression. She simply waited. The lead diplomat raised one hand. "This is Lyra." Ethan frowned. "Okay. She is your offering." Silence. Mara blinked hard. "I'm sorry," Ethan said slowly. "My what?" "She now belongs to you under treaty law." Mara nearly coughed. Ethan stared at the diplomats in disbelief. "You're giving me a person?" "She is a diplomatic servant created for obedience." "That doesn't make it better." The alien remained calm. "She was engineered to serve." Ethan looked back at the woman. She had not moved once. Not even slightly. That disturbed him more than fear would have. "What's your name?" he asked her. "Lyra Unit 7. Unit. Not person. Unit." Ethan felt anger crawl into his chest. "You understand what's happening?" "Yes." "And you're okay with this?" "I was created for this purpose." There was no sadness in her voice. No pain. Only certainty. Like she truly believed her life belonged to someone else. Ethan turned back toward the diplomats. "No." The chamber became silent. The lead diplomat tilted his head. "Clarify. I'm not taking a slave. She is treaty property. She's alive. She is functional." Mara whispered under her breath, "This is getting bad." Ethan ignored her. "You fought humans for 11 years and still learned nothing." The diplomats stared silently. "She exists to serve," one finally said. "She has no independent purpose." Ethan stepped closer to Lyra. For the first time, her eyes shifted toward him. "You know why humans kept fighting your empire?" Ethan asked quietly. No answer came. "Because nobody gets to decide what another person exists for." The room went completely still. Then Lyra spoke softly. "If I am not assigned, what is my function?" Ethan looked directly at her. For the first time since arriving, his expression softened. You don't need one. Lyra froze. Not physically. Something deeper. Like her entire mind had stopped processing. One diplomat stepped forward quickly. Commander Vale, that statement may damage her conditioning. Good. Mara stared at Ethan. The diplomats stared at Ethan. But Lyra stared at him differently. Like she had just heard something impossible. You are releasing treaty property? The diplomat asked. Ethan crossed his arms. I'm freeing a person. She may become unstable. Ethan gave a tired smile. Welcome to humanity. Suddenly the station lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then alarms exploded across the chamber. Red warning symbols flooded the walls. The diplomats instantly became tense. What happened? Mara snapped. One alien activated a glowing console. And for the first time since arriving, the Varelian looked afraid. Impossible, he whispered. The entire station shook violently. A massive explosion echoed through the chamber. Then another. And another. Mara grabbed her rifle. That's weapons fire. Ethan's eyes narrowed. From who? A terrified voice screamed through the station speakers in the alien language before automatic translation activated. Unknown human warship has entered defensive range. Another impact rocked the station. The diplomat slowly turned toward Ethan. You came alone. I did. The lights suddenly died. Darkness swallowed the chamber before emergency red lights activated overhead. Then Lyra whispered something that made Ethan's blood run cold. There is only one human ship that attacks like this. Another explosion thundered through the station. For the first time, the alien woman sounded afraid. The Black Revenant has arrived. The station shook again. Metal screamed somewhere deep below the chamber. Dust rained from the ceiling as red emergency lights flashed across terrified faces. The Black Revenant, Mara whispered. That ship was destroyed. Ethan's expression darkened. Apparently not. Another explosion slammed through the station hard enough to throw one of the diplomats to the floor. The alarms became louder. Outer defense grid failure. Breach detected. Multiple casualties. The Varelian officials looked shaken for the first time since Ethan arrived. One turned toward him quickly. You must stop them. Ethan stared coldly. You think they're here for peace talks? A second diplomat activated a holographic screen. The image flickered violently before stabilizing. A massive black warship floated outside the station. Unlike normal human ships, it carried no military markings. No nation. No fleet insignia. Only claw-like scars carved across the hull. The Black Revenant. Humanity's ghost ship. Officially destroyed 3 years ago during the siege of Titan Reach. Unofficially, stories never stopped. Entire pirate fleets erased. Alien outposts burned to ash. War criminals hunted across sectors. Nobody knew who controlled it anymore. That was the terrifying part. Mara slowly lowered her rifle. I thought it was a myth. So did I, Ethan admitted. Suddenly the hologram changed. Security footage appeared. Human soldiers in black combat armor stormed through the station corridors with brutal precision. Not regular military. These moved differently. Fast. Efficient. Merciless. One Varelian guard fired at them. A human soldier caught the rifle barrel, snapped it sideways, and shot the alien point-blank without slowing down. Mara's face tightened. Those aren't soldiers. No, Ethan said quietly. They're Reapers. The diplomats exchanged nervous looks. Even aliens knew that name. Human Black Ops units trained during the war's worst years. Officially erased from military records after the peace treaty discussions began. Too violent. Too uncontrollable. Too useful to exist publicly. The hologram zoomed closer. A tall armored figure walked through the corridor while explosions burned behind him. Black combat armor. Heavy coat. Silver skull painted across the helmet. And in his hand, a plasma blade glowing deep red. Mara's voice became very quiet. Oh no! Ethan felt his stomach tighten. He recognized that armor. recognized the way the man walked. Like death already belonged to him. "Who is that?" one diplomat demanded. Ethan didn't answer immediately, because he already knew. And that was bad news for everyone. The armored figure stopped directly in front of a security camera. Slowly, he looked up. Even through the mask, Ethan could feel it. The man knew he was watching. Then the transmission cut to black. Silence filled the chamber. Finally Mara spoke. "That's Kane." One diplomat looked confused. "Kane?" Ethan nodded once. "Commander Nathan Kane. The Butcher of Europa." Even the station seemed quieter after those words. During the war, Kane had been humanity's most feared weapon. Not because he enjoyed violence. Because nothing stopped him once he started. Entire enemy battalions vanished wherever he went. There were stories about him surviving decompression, radiation exposure, even direct plasma strikes. Most people assumed the stories were exaggerated. Most people were wrong. "He died," Mara whispered. Ethan kept staring at the dead hologram screen. No body was ever found. Another explosion rocked the station. This one closer. The diplomats became visibly nervous. "You must speak to him," one said urgently. Ethan laughed once. A short, humorless sound. "You think Kane listens to people?" The alien leader stepped forward. "He is human. That's exactly the problem." Then the chamber doors exploded inward. Everyone turned instantly. Smoke poured through the ruined entrance. Alien guards screamed outside. Gunfire echoed violently through the corridor. Mara raised her rifle. The diplomats backed away in fear. And Lyra? Lyra moved closer to Ethan. Not because she was ordered to. Because she chose to. Heavy footsteps echoed through the smoke. Slow. Calm. Deliberate. Then a figure emerged. Black armor. Burned coat. Silver skull mask. Commander Nathan Kane. He carried a plasma rifle in one hand and a glowing blade in the other. Behind him stood 6 Reapers covered in blood and ash. The room froze. One diplomat tried to speak. "You cannot." Kane shot him without even looking. The alien collapsed instantly. Mara flinched. The remaining diplomats stumbled backward in horror. Ethan stepped forward immediately. "Kane." The masked figure stopped moving. For a moment neither man spoke. Then Kane slowly removed his helmet. Older now. More scars. Colder eyes. But alive. "You look terrible," Kane said calmly. Mara almost laughed from pure shock. Ethan folded his arms. "You blew up a peace station. It got your attention. You killed a diplomat. He annoyed me." The Reapers behind him remained completely silent, like statues waiting for orders. Kane's eyes finally shifted toward Lyra, and instantly narrowed. "What is that?" Before Ethan could answer, one of the diplomats shouted desperately. "She belongs to him now under treaty law." The room became very quiet. Kane slowly looked back at Ethan. Then at Lyra. Then back again. His expression changed. Not confusion. Rage. Cold, dangerous rage. "You took a slave?" Ethan's voice sharpened instantly. "No. She was given to me. And you accepted. I freed her." Lyra looked between them silently. Kane stared at Ethan for several long seconds, then finally stepped closer to her. Lyra didn't move. Didn't flinch. Kane studied her glowing markings carefully. And for the first time since entering the room, his expression became uncertain. "She's not normal," he muttered. One diplomat spoke carefully from the corner. "She is a bonded construct designed for obedience." Kane's eyes snapped toward the alien. "What did you call her?" The diplomat swallowed hard. "A construct." The next second Kane moved. Fast. Too fast to follow. He grabbed the diplomat by the throat and slammed him against the wall hard enough to crack metal. The room erupted in panic. "You built living beings to obey?" Kane growled. The alien struggled helplessly. "That was her purpose." Kane's grip tightened. Then suddenly, Lyra spoke. "Please stop." Everything froze. Kane slowly looked toward her. Not because of the words. Because of how she said them. Not obedient. Not programmed. Emotional. Human. And for the first time since arriving, Nathan Kane released the diplomat slowly. The alien collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. But nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. Because the entire room had heard it. Emotion. Real emotion. Coming from Lyra. Kane stared at her carefully. "You asked me to stop," he said quietly. Lyra looked confused by her own voice. "Yes. Why?" She hesitated. Not processing. Thinking. "I did not want him to die." The room fell silent again. One of the diplomats whispered in shock. "That should not be possible." Kane looked back at the alien sharply. "Say that again." "She was engineered without independent emotional development," the diplomat said nervously. "Her kind obeys. They do not choose." Lyra turned slowly toward them. "I am choosing now." The words hit harder than any weapon. Ethan saw fear spread across the diplomats' faces. Not fear of humans. Fear of change. Fear that something they created had become something they could no longer control. Another explosion thundered through the station. The entire chamber shook violently. Warning lights flashed faster now. Core instability detected. Mara checked her scanner quickly. "That's bad," she muttered. "How bad?" Ethan asked. "The station reactor is failing." One diplomat stiffened in horror. "No, impossible." Kane grabbed the alien by the collar again. "What did you idiots build this place on?" The diplomat's silver skin paled. "The station draws energy from the fractures beneath Velis Prime." Ethan frowned. "The glowing cracks." "Yes." Mara looked at her scanner again. "Oh, this gets worse," she whispered. Everyone turned toward her. "The reactor isn't just failing," she said carefully. "It's overloading the planetary fractures." The diplomat's eyes widened. "If the core collapses..." Ethan understood first. The planet breaks apart. Silence. Billions of people still lived on Velis Prime. Entire cities. Colonies. Children. And now the whole world was minutes away from destruction. Kane released the diplomat violently. "How long?" 17 minutes, Mara answered. The room exploded into movement. Diplomats rushed toward consoles. Alien guards shouted through comms. Outside the chamber, terrified civilians flooded the station corridors. But Ethan noticed something worse. Nobody knew what to do. Fear controlled the room completely. Then Kane looked at Ethan. One short glance. That was enough. Old soldiers didn't need speeches. They understood each other instantly. "You take the reactor," Ethan said. Kane nodded once. "You take evacuation." Mara blinked. "That's the plan. That's always the plan." Kane turned toward his Reapers. "Move." The black-armored soldiers instantly disappeared into the corridors without hesitation. Pure discipline. Pure violence. Pure humanity. The diplomats watched them leave in stunned silence. One alien finally spoke quietly. "Why are your soldiers willing to die so easily?" Ethan grabbed a fallen rifle from the floor. "They're not." The alien looked confused. "Then why?" Ethan checked the weapon charge. "Because humans learned something your species never did." Another violent tremor shook the chamber. He looked directly at the terrified diplomats. "Freedom means responsibility." Then he ran toward the evacuation sectors. Lyra followed immediately. This time nobody ordered her to. The station had become chaos. Smoke filled the corridors. Emergency lights flashed endlessly. Civilians screamed while security teams tried desperately to maintain order. A section of the ceiling collapsed nearby. Ethan pulled 2 alien children out of the debris before the metal even stopped falling. The mother stared at him in shock. "You saved them." Ethan shoved the children toward her. "Run to Docking Bay 3. More explosions echoed through the station. Every second mattered now. Lyra stayed beside Ethan the entire time. Not behind him. Beside him. Watching. Learning. Understanding. At one corridor intersection, terrified civilians froze as flames blocked their path. Nobody moved. Nobody acted. Then Ethan walked directly into the fire. Mara shouted after him. "Ethan!" But he kept going. Using a broken pipe, he forced open the emergency coolant valve inside the burning hallway. Freezing vapor exploded outward. The flames vanished instantly. The civilians stared at him in disbelief. Ethan coughed heavily as he stepped back out. His armor melted slightly from the heat. Lyra looked at him carefully. "You could have died." "Yeah," Ethan answered. "You knew that?" "Yep." She stared at him longer this time. "Then why did you do it?" The answer came immediately. "Because they needed someone to." Lyra fell silent. Processing. Not commands. Not programming. Understanding. Then suddenly the station lights died completely. Darkness swallowed everything. For one terrifying second, only distant screams filled the corridors. Then emergency power activated again. Mara checked her scanner. "Oh no." Ethan looked at her. "What happened?" The reactor containment just failed. Even from deep inside the station, they felt it. A pulse. Like the entire structure groaned in pain. Then Kane's voice suddenly crackled through the comm system. For the first time since arriving, he sounded worried. "Ethan." Static hissed loudly. "We found the core." Another explosion interrupted him. Then his voice returned. "But there's a problem." Ethan's stomach tightened. "What problem?" Several seconds of silence followed. Then Kane answered quietly. "The reactor can't be shut down manually." Mara's face drained of color. "What?" "There's only one way to stop overload." Ethan already knew he wouldn't like the answer. Kane continued. "Someone has to stay behind and trigger a direct containment lock from inside the core chamber." Silence. Everyone understood immediately. It was a suicide mission. Then Lyra stepped forward. "I will do it." Ethan turned instantly. "No." She looked directly at him. "My life was created for service." "That's not happening." "But billions will die." Ethan grabbed her arm firmly. "You are not dying just because somebody tells you your life matters less." Lyra stared at him silently, then asked the question that broke him. "If not me, then who?" Before Ethan could answer, Kane's voice returned through the comms. "Quiet. Calm. Resolved. I already made my choice." 3 months after the destruction of the peace station, Velis Prime finally knew silence. Not the silence of fear. Not the silence after war. Real silence. The kind people forgot existed after 11 years of endless death. The glowing fractures across the planet had stabilized. Cities slowly rebuilt around them while human and Varelian workers stood side by side for the first time in history. No weapons. No fleets. Just survivors trying to live again. Commander Ethan Vale stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city. Morning sunlight reflected across silver towers and blue rivers far below. For once, nobody needed him to fight. Behind him, soft footsteps approached. Natural footsteps now. Not perfectly measured. Not programmed. Lyra stopped beside him quietly. She no longer wore ceremonial white robes. Simple dark clothing replaced them, and her glowing markings seemed softer than before. More alive. "You are awake early again," she said. Ethan smirked faintly. "Humans are bad at resting." "That appears accurate." For a moment they watched the sunrise together. Ships crossed peacefully through the sky above the city. No battle formations. No alarms. Just life. Lyra looked toward the horizon. "I still think about him." Ethan's expression softened slightly. "Yeah," he answered quietly. "Me too." Nathan Kane. The man who gave his life to save billions. His name had spread across both human and alien worlds. Among humans, he became a legend. Among aliens, something far more dangerous. Proof. Proof that humans were different. Lyra lowered her eyes slightly. I still do not fully understand why he sacrificed himself. Ethan leaned against the railing. Most humans don't understand it either. But humans continue doing it. Yeah. Why? Ethan thought for a long moment, then finally answered. Because someday someone might do the same for us. Lyra absorbed the words silently. That was humanity. Not stronger. Not smarter. Just willing to carry each other through darkness. Even strangers. Especially strangers. Suddenly voices echoed below them in the city streets. Children. Laughing. Running through the market district. Lyra watched them carefully. Months ago she would have analyzed them like data. Now she simply smiled. A real smile. Ethan noticed. You're getting better at that. At smiling. At being alive. She looked at him quietly. I learned from humans. Ethan laughed softly. That's either very good or very concerning. She tilted her head slightly. I am still deciding. For the first time in years, Ethan felt peace settle into his chest. Not victory. Not relief. Peace. Then Lyra suddenly asked, Do you regret freeing me? The question caught him off guard. Ethan looked at her carefully. The woman standing beside him was nothing like the silent creature he met on the station. Back then she stood like property. Now she stood like herself. No, he answered immediately. Not even once. Lyra looked away toward the city again. When I was created, they told me freedom was dangerous. They weren't wrong. She glanced back at him. But humans still choose it. Every time. Even when it hurts. Ethan nodded slowly. Especially then. Silence followed. Comfortable silence. Then Lyra spoke again, softer this time. When you first met me, I did not understand what I was. And now. She looked toward the sky. I think, she paused carefully, I think I am becoming someone. Ethan smiled faintly. That's all any human is doing too. Below them, Velis Prime continued healing. Not perfect. Not fixed. Healing. The fractures that once looked like wounds now looked different somehow. Like scars. Proof something survived. A soft wind moved across the balcony. Lyra closed her eyes briefly, feeling it against her skin. Months ago she would not have understood why humans enjoyed simple things like wind or sunlight. Now she did. Because moments mattered precisely because they ended. That was the terrible beautiful thing about humanity. Humans knew life was fragile. And still chose kindness. Still chose love. Still chose each other. A distant memorial bell echoed across the city. The entire skyline paused for 1 minute of silence. For the dead. Human and alien alike. Ethan lowered his head respectfully. Lyra copied him at first. Then stopped. Not because she forgot. Because she finally understood she no longer needed to copy humans to stand beside them. When the bell finished, Ethan quietly spoke. You know what scares the galaxy most about humans? Lyra looked toward him. Our ships, she guessed. No. Our weapons. Ethan shook his head. Then what? He looked out across the peaceful world below them. The fact that we keep caring. Lyra frowned slightly. That is what makes humans dangerous. That's what makes us impossible to kill. The words settled between them quietly. And somewhere deep inside herself, Lyra finally understood. Empires feared human strength. Armies feared human rage. But what truly changed the galaxy was human compassion. The ability to look at a broken thing and still believe it deserved freedom. Still believe it deserved hope. Still believe it deserved a future. Even her. Lyra stepped closer beside Ethan. Not behind him. Never behind him again. Above them, the stars stretched endlessly across the sky. For the first time in her existence, Lyra was not waiting for orders. Not waiting for purpose. Not waiting to belong to someone else. She was choosing her own path. And Ethan realized something as he looked toward the horizon. The war had not ended because humans were stronger than aliens. It ended because humans gave the galaxy something it had forgotten. Freedom. Not as power. Not as rebellion. But as responsibility. As kindness. As choice. Below them, Velis Prime turned slowly beneath the morning light. No longer broken. Just healing. And for the first time in a very long time, so were they.